Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? It's good to see you. So today I realized the other day that we hadn't actually had like a real chat in a while. I totally just pressed a key on my keyboard by accident. Whoops. But we haven't had a chat in a little while, so figured why not start off today with something. Also, too, like there's a lot of like specific streaming topics we could talk about, but there's so many tertiary issues that like are still important and still need to be discussed. And so for me, like there's been a lot of emphasis on mental health lately and just like general well-being when it comes to life in general and some on streaming, but I figured that why not share some tips and information that I have gotten and used successfully when dealing with issues that I have. And I mean, mental health is such a huge thing that you could spend hours talking about it and still not cover everything. But I figured it would make more sense to be like honed topic, if that makes sense. Like pick a specific thing to talk about rather than trying to cover everything, because that's a lot. And nobody wants to hear me talk that much, I promise. Um, and for me, like anxiety is the one that I decided to focus on because for me, like anxiety is such a insidious problem. Like even if you work really hard for years and you don't feel it, it can still come up just out of nowhere from the most random thing. And so I feel like there needs to be a little bit more like practical advice, because if you have ever been diagnosed with any type of anxiety, then you know that it can pop up out of nowhere even if you think you're good. So having some tools on hand to give you like footing for if that happens, I think is really important, because it's so easy to be blindsided by physical health issues, mental health issues, all of this. So the more we can do to prepare, the better we'll be in the long run, and the less likely you'll be to completely fall off the ladder if something comes up that you weren't expecting. And for me, anxiety is that big one. I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety, and as well I have depression, and I meet the diagnostic criteria for borderline personality disorder. However, I don't actually have a diagnosis for that. So like I don't say I have it, but when I'm addressing excuse me, my like self-care and like my own like development and trying to improve my coping mechanisms for these issues, I approach it from the angle of that is an issue I have, and I found it to be really, really helpful, and like it's increased my success, if that makes sense, with my own like self-treatment options. But I find like depression versus anxiety, like depression doesn't necessarily blindside you, at least me. Sorry, I'm talking from my own perspective. Depression doesn't necessarily blindside me in the same way that anxiety does. I can usually feel a depressive slide starting. I can't always stop it. I do the best I can. I can't always stop it, but like it's less shocking. Whereas anxiety, I can feel amazing for days, no problems, everything going smoothly, and then something that I've done 100 times before will come up, and suddenly it's like fight or flight, and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do. And so I think that makes it an important one to address on its own, because it can creep on you and then suddenly like, jump out of the corner and have at you. But basically, I have anxiety, and I find anxiety to be one of the most insidious issues when it comes to streaming, because like for me, I see depression, I have depression, I know when it's coming. I can feel the hill, I can feel the rolling. That doesn't happen with me with my anxiety. With my anxiety, it's like everything's good, everything's good, everything's good, brick wall, and I'm falling apart and I don't know what to do. So for me, knowing how to deal with that ahead of time is so helpful, because it means when something like that happens, I have tools in my kit to be able to deal with it so that it doesn't take over my life and wreck things for me. I will say anxiety is basically an umbrella, and there are a bunch of different actual diagnoses you can get under that umbrella. I'm specifically going to talk about generalized anxiety because that's most common, and it's the one that tends to be like the annoying, asshole friend who's just like, hey, guess what? That person really hates you. Panic disorder and like other types are their own issues that I do not have experience with. I do not have any of those. So I'm just approaching this from my experience and things that have worked for me when it comes to generalized, like across the board anxiety rather than things like panic attacks and stuff. How do you know if a person has anxiety? Well, it's going to be individual, but if you're worrying all the time about things that don't require worrying, and if you always are feeling like fight or flight is like your normal being, like everything is freaking out all the time, it could be. I am not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I cannot make diagnoses, but I can tell you what it feels like for me. And yeah, a lot of people with anxiety either don't know they have anxiety because it's such a weird thing that most people just think everybody feels like that, or they have it and either they, like me, have worked really hard and it doesn't affect their life as much, or they don't want to accept that it's a thing that they have and they just kind of like pound it down until it's underneath them, and then it comes flying up when they least expect it and it sidelines them. Anxiety is also part of life to some extent. That is very, very true. Almost everyone has at least a little bit of it sometimes because it is a mechanism to protect ourselves. It is part of our evolution to worry about certain things because worrying about them keeps us safe. Anxiety is when that is turned up to 11. Like for me, before I started working really hard at how to manage it, and having like medications brought in and other things, it was like fight or flight 24/7. Literally everything in life scared the crap out of me. It didn't matter if it was something I'd done 100 times before, somebody I knew really well. I was always scared something bad was going to happen. Usually from the angle of, what if I make a mistake? What if I say something stupid? What if people are mean to me? Like the social was like the big thing for me, but I mean literally everything. Like, what if my house burns down? What if I forget my keys and I can't get back into my house? Like all of these weird worries all the time. And like little things that shouldn't be a big deal suddenly feel like Everest in your brain. But when it comes to anxiety and streaming, like there are so many things that can cause you to be anxious, both leading up to streaming and then after you've started. And I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify what specific parts of streaming are causing you the anxiety. It's really easy to say everything, but that's not a helpful answer. Make a list, write down everything about it that is causing you anxiety, that is flaring it up for you. Even if it's every single aspect of streaming, write down every single one, because each of those issues is going to require a different response. So knowing specifically what the issues are, you can then find a way to either cope or address the issues. So either the anxiety is there, but it's less bothersome, or you've reinforced that there's nothing to worry about, and then the anxiety will, over time, subside. For me, going live every single day causes me anxiety. Doubly so if I'm doing something new. So if I'm playing a different game, if I'm starting with a chat that's a topic I've never talked about before, if I'm, participating in something that might bring a bunch of new people in, like all of that is just up to 11. But because I know that going live and all of these things cause issues, I'm able to cope with it better. So it's there, but I can kind of ignore it, and then it'll fade off during the stream. So yeah, I've got a few tips here. Again, they're based on my experiences and the things that have helped me. They may not work for you. I'm not diagnosing you, and I'm not telling you that these will solve all your problems. I promise, it's really, really not. But these might help you or someone you know who is struggling with this. My first tip is mostly if you're not already a streamer, if you haven't started, or if you're really like really new, or if you've been gone a long time, so you're basically starting from scratch. Start slowly. And streaming can be really like overwhelming. There's so much to it that can potentially go wrong, that like if you're looking at someone like Ninja or like Markiplier or, you know, another really big streamer with thousands of viewers, you know, tons of tech equipment, all of these fancy things, and then you're thinking, how am I going to do that? Of course you're going to be like frozen in inaction because it's so overwhelming. If you start really slowly though, you can kind of have the anxiety that rises stay lower, and then as each step comes, you can keep it to the manageable level, and that over time should help it, you know, slow down. Again, it will never go away unless you get really good medication and really good therapy, but you can manage it. For me, what this means for me, when I started streaming back in August, I turned on World of Warcraft. I think I had like some of the freebie overlays from Slobs, and that was it. I did not use a mic. I did not use a cam. I didn't have like any fancy alerts, any of that. It was the game and like a free overlay. And I played for like an hour, hour and a half, couple hours, something like that. Of course, I had like 1 or 2 viewers for like 5 seconds, but that wasn't the point. The point was exposure. Start with nothing at the lowest possible level so that there's as little that can go wrong as possible. And then once you're comfortable with that, add something in. So me, I started with nothing. And then after like 3 or 4 streams, I added push to talk mic. So I could still stream whenever, like my kids are around, but nobody would hear it. But I could start talking a little bit as I felt comfortable, you know? And then I did that for a little bit, you know, and over the course of 3 or 4 streams, I would talk more on it. So I would narrate more of what I was doing, try to engage the 1 or 2 people that would come in. So I felt more comfortable with that. When I felt more comfortable with that, I took the push to talk away. So I had my live mic, but still no camera, still nothing fancy, just, you know, standard freebie overlays. And so I got a little bit more used to talking. And it still took a few streams for me to be able to talk constantly for the full length of my stream, which at that time was only about 2 hours. But taking it one step at a time allowed me to manage the anxiety that would come with each new step, because as I would do it, my anxiety would go whoop, and then I'd do just that thing for a little bit, and then it would go down. And then I'd add something new in, so it would pop back up, and then it would go back down, and it would go back down. And so it's done that. And I mean, I still have anxiety when I start streaming. I still have anxiety from changing games, changing a topic, because there's so much that can go wrong. What if somebody, you know, comes in and starts attacking me? What if I suddenly get 100 people watching me and I don't know who they are and they're all judging me? What if, you know, I'm really bad at a game and people start talking shit about me? Like, these are, you know, what if there's a tech problem? What if my mic stops working? What if, you know, what ifs? There's a million what ifs. Anxiety brain is really good at finding every possible thing that can go wrong. So doing it a little bit at a time lets you get a handle on that anxiety brain. And anxiety brain, the best way to fight anxiety brain is to prove that the thing you think is going to go wrong either won't go wrong, or if it does, it's not nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. The sky will not fall on you if you forget to turn your mic on. If someone comes in and makes a snarky comment, like, it's crappy, absolutely, but the sky won't fall. You'll pick yourself up, you'll keep going, and you'll be good to go. But yes, and then from there, you know, you start slowly, build up slowly. You will take longer to grow that way. That is an important thing to remember. But slow, steady growth will always trump fast spike growth. So, especially if you haven't streamed before and you're not 100% sure that it's for you, doing it this way will help you keep your anxiety at at a good reasonable level that you can manage, while also giving you good exposure to the base of streaming and whether that is good for you. Because some people will know right away it's not for them, and that's cool. That's fine. It's not for everybody. You can be a viewer, supporter, whatnot, and you're still awesome. For some people, they'll realize later on other aspects of it aren't for them, and that's okay too. But you want to make sure that as you're going, you're getting the best introduction with the fewest problems, if that makes any sense. Starting slow. Now, if you're already streaming and you're struggling, some of this will definitely help as well. Networking is incredibly important in the early stages of streaming to grow that initial supporter base, the support base that will hold you as you start climbing the ladder. But networking is so scary to someone whose anxiety manifests as social anxiety, because there are so many things that can happen and your brain will tell you every single one of them, and they're never good. Something that I found that helped a lot was, well, it's kind of twofold. Finding a small community where there's, maybe 100, 200 people that's tight-knit. But before that, finding a small community and finding somebody in that community that you can get to know. Find somebody whose stream style fits you, whose, sense of humor, all that stuff work with you. Get to know them, hang out in their streams, chat with them. And then from there, learn about their community through them. I find knowing one person can make it so much easier when you need to encounter many people. And this is something that I do in real life too. If I'm going to be going to a place where I won't know anybody, I try to either have someone come with me or find someone that's going to be there that I do know. And then I kind of gravitate to them as I get comfortable with the situation. These days, it's mostly my husband. Sometimes it's my daughter, actually, surprisingly enough. She's got anxiety as well. But even the two of us being anxious together, it's easier than trying to tackle it on your own. So if you get to know another streamer in this community, and that way you know somebody, you've made a friend, they'll probably start supporting you as well. You can learn about their community, and then if it feels like it might be a good fit for you, you can join and stay connected with that one person. So chat when they're chatting, hang out in their streams and get to know the other members. And it allows you to kind of form the web connections that you need, a baby step at a time. Tried streaming several months ago. Anxiety kept me from continuing. Oh no. What specifically was causing you the most anxiety? Because I had it really bad too, and I still have it. So maybe something I've done would be able to help you. But yeah, once you get comfortable with a small community, that will help. Even if you can never really bridge the gap with your anxiety to get into a bigger community, you've still met a lot of people. You can still get to know a lot of people. Even if you, again, maintain a small group of people that you really interact with, it's still easier knowing one person and then knowing two people than if you're just going in blind with a bunch of strangers. That still is awful for me. And I'm in a couple communities that are very large, and as much as I want to be active, I still struggle to do that because there's so many people I don't know, and so many things that could go wrong. And even though it's nothing as ever bad has ever happened, hitting going live and then the first few minutes of my stream is really difficult for me as well. So for me, what helped with that was to create a pre-stream routine. Now, as you know, if you've ever hung out my streams, things still go wrong, so it still doesn't always work. But I've laid out what I need to do before each stream so that when I press live, or when I hit go live and then I start my stream, in theory, all of my ducks are in a row, so it should go smoothly. As we all know, it doesn't always work. I forget to turn on my captions on pretty often. I'll either forget to turn my mic on or accidentally mute it again. My games don't always work perfectly as soon as I load them up. The last few Silent Hills have proven that. But at least if I know what I need to do to get to going live and then continuing into my stream, it makes it easier because at least the setup is there. So I may have forgotten to turn my captions on, but the window with the button I need to hit to do it. Oops. Whacked my mic. Whoops. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. It's rude. I'm sorry. The button is right there. So even if I realize I've forgotten to hit it, I can just, mouse over, click, done. So that has lessened the amount of anxiety I have because I'm not sitting in front of my computer, in front of my camera going, what do I do? What do I do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? I know what I need to do. And so I do it and then I'm good to go. I still, hitting the go live is still tough, but it's less tough now than it was 3 months ago. And I imagine it'll be less tough in 3 more months. I do mean to write down an actual list of each step of what I need to do to go live. I really do because my memory is very poor and I do still forget sometimes. But even if I don't, I still at least, for the most part, I know what I need to do. So another thing that, for me, a lot of my anxiety is about what if I make a mistake? What if I do something wrong and then people attack me or make fun of me or, whatever. Anything that would be in that vein. For me, allowing myself to actually make a mistake or purposely making a mistake has done wonders to stop the anxiety brain. Because the big thing is unknown. Anxiety feeds off unknowns. If you don't know what will happen if this thing does or doesn't happen, it will feed you every possible worst case scenario that you can come up with. So sometimes doing the thing that you're afraid of doing will actually help it because you've then made the point in your conscious mind that if A, then B does not equal C, that worst case scenario won't happen. So you stop giving your anxiety fuel if you show it that things happen and the sky doesn't fall. So honestly, I didn't have to purposely make any mistakes for streaming specifically, because I would make mistakes. I still make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. But because they've happened through the time, I've been able to take away the fuel by going, hey, if I forget to turn my mic on, what's the worst that happens? Well, sometimes it's gone a long time before somebody told me. My numbers weren't great, but the sky didn't fall. Nobody came in and made fun of me. Maybe I forgot to turn my captions on. I sometimes don't realize until partway into my stream. It's not the end of the world. It is something that I really do want to provide, but it's not the end of the world. So even if I only turn them on partway through, it's really not that big a deal. Yeah, I look a little silly maybe, because the more different things that happen and then don't go horribly wrong, the less worst case scenarios it can give you. Because every time it tries to give you one, you turn around and say, no, that's not what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen because you've experienced it. So sometimes just allowing yourself or purposely making a mistake so that you can show your brain that bad things aren't going to happen can make it a lot easier. And then in the future, if things go wrong, you already know that in all likelihood, nothing bad is going to happen. So you're less likely to start spiraling into panic. And another thing, if you're, especially with me, with all the social aspects of being afraid of people being negative, people saying, disagreeing with you, or, trolls attacking you, that kind of thing, having good supportive mods can really help with that. Because if you know that they're on your side, they agree with what you're doing and what you're saying, you don't really have to worry about that kind of thing showing up because they're there to protect you and your chat from that crap. Now, this goes back into the networking. The easiest way to get good mods is either through people that spend a lot of time in your stream and know you well and know the style of your stream and your chat and whatnot, or through communities where sometimes there are people that prefer to just mod rather than stream, who know how to mod very well and that mesh with you and what you want your stream to be. So if you start at the top and kind of slowly work your way through each step, you'll get to this point where you'll be able to have those mods because you've met the people, they're good people. If you're struggling to get mods, anxiety can make that even worse, right? Because, like, what if I ask someone to mod and they're like, no, I don't like you? Or, you know, what if you have a mod who you think is good and then turns around and does X, Y, or Z that's bad? Those are things that can happen, but chances are slim. So if you get to know people through the networking, you know, baby steps at a time, one person and then people and so on, you will build a community where you'll be able to pull one or two or three people who will be happy to help you and keep the negativity and the crap from overtaking it. Me, when it comes to trolls especially, if you know that you and your mods, you know, are good and you work together, everything works, and you set that up as your, this is exactly what's going to happen, that can take the edge off as well, because all of your reactions are clarified. If you know what is allowed and what isn't, you can stop the stuff that will cause your anxiety to spike before it takes over. Now, there are sometimes situations where things escalate really quickly, or, you know, they turn into like DM attacks and that kind of stuff. That's a different issue that I do not have experience to speak on, so I'm not going to try and give advice on that. But when it comes to the low level stuff, having good mods helps a lot, because they can shoulder the burden if something comes in, so you don't worry about, you know, getting distracted from your game or activity or whatever you're doing. My last big tip, this one is definitely more for if you're already streaming, maybe for a little while, maybe for a long time, but I found that instead of trying to change and put on a persona, embracing who I am as a person and all of my myriad of quirks actually helped me more to stifle anxiety spikes than almost anything else. Because if you embrace the way you are and you make it part of your streaming identity, your supporters will get to know you and come to expect it from you. And like everybody around you will get to know who you are as an actual person, not a persona. And that can help a lot, because somebody can't attack you with something that you're not embarrassed about. If you embrace it and someone tries to give you crap, you just turn it back on them. I had one stream, I was doing Twitch Sings, and we were just having fun. I was using the voice changers and all that, and just sitting chatting with Difox, and guy comes in and is like, oh, let the cringe begin. And we're just like, what cringe? What? I'm just messing around. Like, what do you think something negative here? Like, get the fuck out of here with that. Like, I have a bunch of weird quirks that I've made part of my thing, my shtick. So my supporters know that. People come into the stream and they immediately get a sense of who I am, and if they don't like what I do, then they leave, or if they cause crap, we ban them. And it's just easy peasy. Like, I'm pretty bad at almost all games that I play. I don't care. I'm still having fun. Oh, you suck. Yeah, and? Somebody can't hurt you with something that you've accepted about yourself. So again, none of these tips are gonna get rid of anxiety. It will probably never go away. Every time I change games, every time I change topics, every time I, change an overlay or do this or do that, I'm going to worry about it. But because I am aware of that and I have all of these tools in my toolkit, it helps keep it manageable. And then, especially too, with a lot of those ones around starting, once I've been at it for a few minutes, the anxiety starts to ease, and then I'm, usually my good, chilled out self. Except that my anxiety won't go away. I can only control and manage it. 100%.